welcome to the last Monday evening lecture of the 2013-14 school year. So thank you for coming. Very pleased to be able to have Elena Manferdini this evening. I also want to say that this is our Eva Endowed lecture, and we are very pleased to be able to have Eva and Lynn Maddox here. So thank you guys. There will be a reception after, and I will again emphasize after the lecture. So outside the office, you know, on the order of 6:45 or so, whenever we get done here. This is also our second in a series of clinical picks, clinical choice lecture series. So we had Paul Anderson introduce David Carson, and so tonight I will pass on the honor of introducing Elena to Andrezago, who was the person who graciously arranged tonight. So I'm introducing an introducer, and I will stop that now. I want to say two quick things. Elena, I won't say that she was a student of mine because that would take credit for something that I can't take credit for. But Elena, I and Greg Lynn were both Elena's thesis advisors, apparently. And no? Yeah, okay, it's true. So you can imagine what great fortitude she must have to deal with that contradictory advice. And I think at some point I told Elena maybe she should really do something else because architecture is really limited and her imagination was greater than that. So I think I kind of advised her to leave architecture. But she did take my advice, and I'm very happy about that too. So this is all a sign that you shouldn't really listen too much to what anyone tells you. So it's a great pleasure to have Elena here, and I will invite Andrew to come up and introduce her.
Hello. Well, I'll be short. It's my pleasure to introduce Elena Manferdini, and I must say, I suppose there's certain introductions that read biographies. This is not one of them, other than to say that Elena is an architect and many other things besides, and is in practice in Los Angeles. She's also teaches at SCI-Arc, Southern California Institute of Architecture, where I also teach. And she is an extremely important member of the design faculty there. She's quite an important member of the architecture and design community in Los Angeles, not to say beyond. And does a couple of other things. I help coordinate there what we call visual studies. And she's really been the kind of one of the most important people for a lot of years in the kind of visual culture of the school. And I think it's really reached its peak now, where she coordinates the graduate thesis program, which is just about to get started for the summer, which is the final semester there in the program. Elena will explain her work, and she does a lot of things ranging from design objects to architectural projects to installations, graphics, interiors. But I think what's more interesting is, I think we're accustomed to the fact that architects do a lot of different things. I think a lot of probably the people that are involved with this school do that. And I think we're also accustomed to thinking of the boundaries of what we talk about as architecture as having a certain porosity, maybe an increasing degree of porosity. And I think that's really good, and I think Elena's someone who very much is about those limits. But I was thinking about another discussion that we've had from time to time here and in other places of the distinction between the profession and the discipline, I suppose. And that's an easy enough distinction. There's a huge amount of architects out there that are about the business of making architecture. And there's a much, much smaller subset of people that are about, let's say, understanding architecture as a certain kind of art form and pushing that forward. So that's interesting, and I think that's true. I think you could sort of turn that Venn diagram on its side and cut a section through that circle that we talk about as the discipline, and understand that even that has its own spectrum. So there could be any number of architects, people working in architecture, who are doing very creative and unusual things, but with very little thought of the connection to the body of work that constitutes what architecture is. The sort of thing that T.S. Eliot writes about with literature and tradition and the individual talent, that it is some big complicated edifice that you somehow change the shape of by fitting in new words into it. I think a lot of people simply use it as a vehicle for creative expression, for artistic expression, for sociological political experimentation, self-discovery, whatever it may be. But we're talking about a much smaller group, and with enough drinks, you start playing a game, name the architect in the profession or out. I think Elena is very interesting in that way, because I think, certainly aside from the fact that by her Italian birthright, she seems to have the discipline of architecture in her DNA, and not to mention through her education and knowledge. But then I think what's interesting is that one can actually have a question mark about that. And I think it has to do with her fearlessness with embracing and exploring things that seem by many measures to be, perhaps stepping outside of the boundary of that discipline. I made an argument for that in her monograph, which you all should pick up a copy of, so I won't go into the details of it. So you get the residual checks from that, I think so. And in fact, it was called A Matter of Matter, was my essay. Borrow a copy from it. And so if you think of like a certain things that people work in when you're dealing with the discipline of architecture, which is how it relates to a body of work, so far as things like geometry, typology, and program, would be less that, and there would be a series of things that one might tend to think of as more minor effects in the service of the big ones, maybe around things like matter, surfaces and textures, and I think it's been Elena's special gift to pay an inordinate amount of attention to these things, as I would argue a way of displacing some of the boundaries of what we consider to be the discipline. So without further ado, Elena Manferdini.
So I would like to thank UIC, yes, you were my thesis advisor, and Zach for his generous introduction to this lecture. And it's never easy to lecture in front of your teachers or colleagues or friends, but I thought that meant to share something truthful tonight. No, but that's something you do with people that really want to work. You somehow need to show something that has some level of meaning, is current, and it's not what everybody else knows. So we'll see a little bit of the current work more than the old work. The lecture will be divided into 3 portions, in simultaneous, so we will move by 3. The first one is going to be about photorealism. And this part of the lecture will address the status of photorealism in architectural representation. And really we'll try to create a pictorial space for architecture between fine arts and digital media. And this portion of the lecture will introduce the most current work, and also we'll try to frame the post-digital position of architecture using as a metaphor 2 classical way of painting. One is tableau vivant, and the other one is signature. The second one is super flat, and we'll mainly focus on issue of flatness and how that relates to forms of drawings, fabrication, and mainly optical perception. Among the key principles, I will talk about emergence and edification, meaning the ability to imply multiple simultaneous reading out of two-dimensional objects through drawings. And this portion really is a reflection on visualization in architecture and how two-dimensionality and starts implying issues of fantasies, not only geometry. And finally, the super real will be the last part of the lecture, where I will talk about materiality, what I think current materiality is at, and what kind of role materials have in architecture or have had in architecture. And somehow this is going to be a little bit of a comparison of the earlier work I've done with what I'm doing right now, and maybe there's a shift there that is worth thinking about. And some things that I've done long ago that don't always fit into what I'm going to talk about, but still I think they're worth showing. The aim of the lecture really is not discussing the value of painting or whether or not painting should be applied to architecture. Painting supposedly was doomed. In fact, painting survived. The relationship between painting and architecture, I think, is a valid one to pursue. And I will try to frame that within issues of flatness, fantasy, and materiality. Also, on a personal level, this lecture is a little bit of a protest, silent protest against what we know as being photorealism and renderings in architecture, so dear to architects of this digital era, and trying to move beyond what renderings can do and really make them become creative tools for architecture rather than a commercial device for representation. So that you know where you're at. I just wanted to show this image because maybe it's when my work changed. I went to see Carlson, which is a place in Los Angeles that was producing once upon a time before they went bankrupt all the Jeff Koons sculpture. I used to know the painting, which is on the left-hand side for you, right-hand side for you, Play-Doh. And it was actually the first time I saw the sculpture. Probably it was done before my times, but that was the first time I saw it as it was being made. And you go to Carson, you see 20 people trying to make that thing happen. And you also see on one side what this sculpture comes from. Really, it's a Play-Doh sculpture that, whether or not it was done by Koons, was somewhat in that place, in the fabricated place. And a lot of effort was placed into the production of the physicality or the appearance of the physicality in larger scale, meaning that there was a lot of effort in trying to scale up the stickiness of the material, the quality of the authorship, the fingerprints of the author, and really the literality of the piece and was quite important to the understanding and the relationship with the viewers, meaning that viewers would believe that Play-Doh sculpture to be Play-Doh only if it looked like it was sticking and if it looked like an artist made it. Therefore, there was a lot of effort trying to scale up the fingerprints of the author. That opened up some questions for me, I think. One is, what is the role of literal figures and literality in general in architecture? How can that be a vehicle for engagement with the audience in the same way that art take that in really deep consideration? What it means to change scale when you have an object? What means authorship? Meaning, why do we see the fingerprints of an author? This romantic idea of the maker, although nothing has been made by Jeff Koons in this sculpture. And mainly all of that came down to the issue of trust, issue basically of audience and theatricality. And I thought there is something to be learned here about those processes of art. And I started looking into it more and more and understood also there are tools that we can adopt in the same way as artists do to move beyond the abstraction of the geometry. So I literally that day, I decided, let's try to see what can be done and how can I bring all this into the computer. And I literally went to Next Engine, bought a scanner from the school, and the first scan was a finger. I thought, can I actually detect the fine grain of the fingerprints? The whole issue was to me, can we bring back texture into the computer? Can we understand geometry in a different way that is not modeled by the scanner? And scanning up until then for me was more of research that was doing with my sister. In Italy is very much used for historical preservation, so I had a lot of experience in that sense. It's mainly a device to image all, which we all know now, but at that point it was actually quite difficult technology to get something like this in. And in a way, this habit of scanning started to become interesting to me, very difficult to use in terms of geometry, but it made you see things in different ways. There are things like facades in Italy that are not easy to draw. Again, there are certification of 1,000 years of windows on this facade, and there is this idea that the city paints itself over and over and over through centuries. And it's kind of somehow brought this idea that there's a fake analog that is somewhat more important, or somehow is important over the ideal digital. And this kind of technology somehow allows you to bring in a new kind of drawing that doesn't come from the ideal drawing, but is actually the certification of realities. And it seemed to me that there is something to be said about these three-dimensional drawings. They have qualities of pictures because they constitute the ground for the pictorial. Picture and image are very different words in English, which I think is interesting. We don't have that division in Italian. And pictures somehow have a bad connotation for architecture, which made them very dear to me. And I thought what was interesting is that it really is where some level of imagination can enter the reality we acquire through three-dimensional scanning. So I'm going to show you the very small projects now that I started doing with scanning. I was really trying to teach myself how to do that, to be honest with you. And I started working with the idea of still nature. Still nature, it's really an exercise of style and composition. But as being going through centuries, many painters use it as a benchmark to prove their abilities against other painters, as a way in which a student tells a master that's anything. No? And it's a conversation among painters mainly. It's really not about the subject, it's not about flora, fauna, bottles, whatever you might want to use as still nature, but it's about the technique you use to paint. And I think it's a conversation within the field, more than a conversation with the audience. And I gave myself a still nature exercise. I said, well, let's try to use this new tool and let's see what I can do with that. And so we started scanning trees in the office, acquiring geometries, and bringing them to the computer and start thinking how to then apply this idea pictorial to it. And really three-dimensionally painting nature to bring that level of natural photorealistic quality into imagination and fantasy. The idea is that the literality of the object could also contain a nature of fantasy that would go beyond the idea of quality of geometry and start engaging the audience in the same way as artwork somehow does, or scale shift in artwork does. This was a very small project I've done in Japan. Again, I was scanning all these elements, and I started also working with the idea that three-dimensional scans could be then manipulated into painting using the computer. It was a wall, quite simple. The idea was to wrap around the stairs. And really, but mainly the issue was to create these deep three-dimensional images, completely flat, that would then find again the three-dimensionality into the printouts and into the shapes of the installation. These are just a few shots to understand. A lot of my work is to deal with the three-dimensionality of the canvas, going flat and going back to three-dimensional again, and how to find scenes for that three-dimensionality to reappear in the project. And in a way, the fingerprints and ladybugs, I mean, there's this idea of something familiar bringing me back to the trust in the image. Another project, again, a small one, where I was looking into the quality of the brushstrokes and how analog brushstrokes are part of the pictorial project in general, and how then I could bring certain qualities of material behavior into the computer. So again, these are really beginning studies of how the brushstrokes, the different brushstrokes of different painters could be brought into three-dimensional themes, and how then photorealistic and three-dimensional scans could start melt down into more abstract shapes. A lot of the work really was about finding the tension of the material through the computer, which was very interesting to me. Having this three-dimensionality of the paint almost melt up to the point of breakage. And this was, I called it fresco because I wrapped around the surfaces of the entry of the gallery space, which was interesting to me because in a way enters and goes back to the idea of the tableau, meaning the tableau being, fresco and tableau in different ways, but it really tells you how you act in space. So the idea was that you would find the position for the viewer to interact with the painting, which in this case is vinyl wrapping around the entry, and how you would participate into the picture. On the other hand, a lot of the work I've done afterwards really embraced the idea of tableau vivant, meaning the theatrical aspect of art. And tableau vivant is always has a stigma to it. I'm going to show a few examples of tableau vivant, which I think are very beautiful, but many of us actually think of tableau vivant as something horrible that happened at some point in art. This is Sacramento di Varano. It's a set of 46 chapels. And there's a set of painting and terracotta statues, which are the same human scale size, full scale size. And what I find interesting is that at some point in history you could actually enter the tableau vivant, you could take even pictures of yourself into the scene. So there is an idea of the stage and the theater. And really what theater says and the stage says is that you have the ability to enter. This chance, this possibility that you as an audience can participate, not only as a viewer, but we actually enter the stage. And that's in a very architectural moment, I think, in the perception, in the distinction between the audience and the stage as two separate entities, but you could enter, the possibility of entering that stage is what I think tableau vivant does. And these are some images of this incredible set of chapels. A more contemporary one, which she defines her work as still nature, still life. I do think there's actually a tableau vivant, at least that's my opinion, what she does. But I she's an artist, or still an artist. And apart from the idea of nature, which I think is interesting in my work, this nature that is not really a easy one, like the stem cell, but she also places into the scene the viewer and the moment of the viewer engaging with the artwork. So Curious Thomas is clearly a biblical reference to the idea of knowledge and participation of the audience. So there was this desire of creating that kind of interaction, or some sort of interaction, was part of two projects I'm going to show you now. One is this small project I'm doing right now for, it's called Out of Focus, it's for a museum, and will actually become a much bigger project for a facade exterior. It's just a set of scans with graphic elements, and a lot of the work has been done on the perception of the depth of the pictorial plane of the tableau through issues of depth obtained through shadows and out of focus scripted shadows behind it. This has been printed on a set of 4x8 panels, and this will become 16 5x10 later on a building in Los Angeles. It's just a big scale. We're very happy when it's printed, that's the happiness, no? So the out of focus picture, but well, and what is nice about it is that it starts interacting with the space, and you see yourself into the fantastic quality of the tableau. And according to the light and the shadows, you either see yourself in it or you don't. So it's a very interactive piece because of the treatment of the glass and the treatment of the mirror, and some are solid, some are not. Other projects that try to deal with the idea of immersion or immersiveness of fantasy. It's called Tempera, and it's been done for the Museum of Contemporary Art. They had a big show about the last 26 years of architecture in California. They asked 12 designers to participate in the competition. They chose 3 for construction. This was my pavilion. A lot of the work has been done to create this super glossy interiors with a set of image mirrors so that you could start seeing your image immersed into the fantastic environment inside the pavilion itself. Shots. A lot of the work also comes from purely a reference to painting and how you can see simultaneously 2 things at the same time. So this cross-hatch of Rosenquist became one of the techniques used, one of the major techniques used in the pavilion to create a set of shadows that would start reflecting yourself as a viewer within the pictorial plane, and also the pavilion itself as a set of colors and shadows. The idea of the geometry was somehow tackle the problem of the ground. When you are in architecture, when you're in California for a while, you realize that, yes, California has a very formalist approach, and a lot of the issues about the issue of the ground and the non-stable relationship between the two. So the idea was to take something incredibly simple, like a cube tilted, and really experience the struggle of that relationship through this very simple and bold move of rotating a platonic volume onto one of the faces. This is just to give you some of the background of the drawing that is at the base of the clouded system, I guess, and the structural system inside. The idea was to go into the super eye candy and super glossy and try to, although clearly there's a tectonic necessity, going beyond that tectonic quality and expressiveness of the tonic and actually using that in a much more ephemeral and cultural way than just mean seams. These are just the unfold of the inside of the pavilion and the outside of the pavilion, so there is a relationship between the two skins together. The pictorial skins inside has a relationship with the tectonic skin outside, but somewhat the stripes will link everything together through colorations and finish. These are some of the shots before we put the skin on, so you can see what is behind. And the details. Yes. I'll show you a small video of another project quite similar in construction done before at Elena Manferdini. Another small project I've done in Los Angeles, Pacific Design Center, Pacific Design Center, it's quite interesting as a building, and I like it quite a lot. Anyway, I was doing a very small project for a gallery. They gave me a space and they told me I could do whatever I wanted to do. I decided to work again with the idea of art candy and what it means in culture in general and what this idea of scanning and coloration can do. So I started scanning candies, quite literally, and work on the literal image to create a level of abstraction and a subgrid that could then inform a more architectural output. So just to show you a bit the technique for the images and how they've been obtained. The space was quite simple, was a room. I decided to work with the ground and the walls. This was the overall idea that we proposed, and to do a sort of sitting and tables where these candles started to invade the space. This was a gallery space, so there are 2 layers to it, and we wanted to get people in. These are some of the initial drawings done a couple of years ago, I think, and some of the renderings of how then the videos would interact with the physical space, and how, again, the inlays of mirror would start allowing you to have this relationship with this idea of fantasy. These are some of the shots of the finished piece with the furniture inside. Again, this is printed vinyl. And these are sort of tables that start to participate with the floors and merge from the photorealistic to the abstract. This is printed aluminum with gloss on top of it. And going to a larger scale, very similar project in many ways. This was the interior of a boat in Japan called Bianca. The boat was existing, and the boat is a boat that goes around Lake Huon, and it's mainly used for daily cruise and to see cherry blossoms and beautiful landscapes. This was an existing boat, and one of the things I proposed was to take away all the cabins inside, because it was all divided, and to create a big space and being able to see nature 360 degrees all around it. Also, the idea is that there are 3 sort of horizons into the boat, one that is close to the water, one to the horizon, and one to the sky. And somewhat using these different levels of your body and the different heights of your body over the water as a datum for the floors and the ceilings. So a lot of it was really taking literal images of these horizons and creating a script to make them abstract enough to become something that will not be predominant, but will participate in the view of the 360 degrees ribbon windows around the boat. Every other surface, which was anything that is vertical, was either white or chrome, so it would be reflecting the water. So we changed the aesthetic of the boat so that it would start reflecting and change its color according to whatever goes close to it. These are the reflected ceiling plan and floor plans of each floors. The boat is usually for sightseeing or meetings or restaurants. This is a project where I did colors in a big way. Definitely that was, I went all out with anything I could. So these are vinyl samples. These are fabric samples for the threads of the carpets. We weaved digitally all the carpets on the boat and matched it with the ceilings. Again, every vertical surface was either white reflective, black reflective, or chrome, so that you would start seeing the chromatics of the floors and the ceiling merged into the verticality and participate in this overall blending. These are both during the night, where you actually don't see outside, and so you see the colors as they are, most probably, where you actually don't see too much reflections. During the day, it's much more active. I'll show you some images. During the day, you start seeing the reflection of the outside cherry blossoms or the outside landscape inside. And while the boat is moving, it's quite active. So you see the ceiling moving along with your view of the lake. And there are multiple water levels almost through this reflection that starts creating effects in the boat. And we kept the core clearly of the restrooms and cabins at the center of the boat where there is circulation. And this is where we went white in the color, so these are fading from very colorful at the tips and much more nude and pale at the center. Both ceilings and facades. And this is where you see the colors start dripping down onto the mirrors. Last project, let's say, for the idea of the body lamp and theatricality is called Sensorium. It's a project I've done in collaboration with Sephora and Venice. Venice is a company that produces scents. There are two companies in the world which I didn't know before starting this project. They do perfumes, so we had 4 designers designing scents, and Sephora did this museum scents in New York. They wanted to promote the idea of perfumes, and we did this project in the Mid-Park district. It was a few months of work. It's a set of sensors where inside we have the fragrances. We worked in collaboration with an editor that did the content of the videos. The idea is that there are sensors into this flowers balls that you see. You go close to it, you inhale, and then a sort of projection comes through the screens that are dealing with ideas of hope or future and so on. And according to the strength of inhaling, actually the scale of the projection changes. It becomes larger. Like in this case, you see. I'm going to show you a small video of the making and this interaction. Sorry. Before getting to that, yeah, it took a long time. It was only a real interaction project with them. Super flat. I think a lot of the work I do has a lot to do with flatness. In implied dimensionality, where it takes the dimensionality as a point of departure, goes to flat, goes back to interdimensional. I don't know, this is something that probably unconsciously I've been obsessed for a long time. And one of the reasons is that flatness has no depth, no camera, no perspective, no hierarchy somehow. It puts together illustration, photography, graphic, in this fine art space, which I think is where I think the best and somewhat becomes a attraction for my work. And also becomes a place of interpolation and fantasy. So a lot of the work I'll show you now is really going towards flatness, even deeper than what I showed you until now. Massive projections. Actually, this was probably a project that's been very influenced by Andrew, when you're close to somebody as a colleague, things sink in. I was looking at projections and patterns on simple shapes and how you cut them and what happens to those patterns. I was doing a small project for the UIC Biennale, so I started thinking about this implied dimensionality of geometry and pattern and how they work together. They gave me a long wall, 80 feet long, and I don't know, 70 feet high, or something, 18 feet high. And I started working with this idea of geometry and implied dimension and how that can then work with the idea of photorealism. So again, you see there are some current techniques, and the cross-section somewhat is what allows to flip from one kind of representation to another one at the eye level, because that's where people really look at. So this was basically a gigantic drawings, a big wallpaper drawings printed onto how do you call this paper? Lenticular paper that really had a dimensionality attached to it. So this was for a small installation in Korea, in Gwangju. We did the backdrop for the design biennale. And this happened to it's about flatness and dimensionality and how one can flip from one to another. Same time, this time was actually a three-dimensional project for the Beijing Biennale 2013. Again, the idea was to project a pattern, they're really from the same family. And this time, the idea was that the more you cut, that you see this mirror of the pattern. And this became a small installation of solid geometry and coloration. And there's also an idea of camouflage, how the pattern then can occupy the floors, and how then shadows and shades start blurring those relationships between volumes and flatness. Competition that I lost. Graduation tent for SCI-Arc, 3 people, 4 people were invited. Quite simple again, trick. It was still the same family of work. 9 cubes tilted, flattened, and again the relationship between photorealistic and geometrical was very much part of the play. It was a quite simple model, quite simple project in many ways. By now you know the techniques. The idea was to bring a garden to SCI-Arc, to the parking lot of SCI-Arc. So, and the idea was to have something that you could eat underneath all year long, not just for graduation. That would allow to arrangement of people for graduation, which is 1,200. They give us something like 1,200 people for graduation, very hierarchical, and then for lectures, 300 for audience. And the idea was to stretch fabric onto structures, printed fabric on both sides. And the idea was that you would change the fabric every year, and you would have different garments. Another project I'm working on right now is in Italy. Staveco was an old military zone in Bologna. The University of Bologna is taking over these areas, and we were invited to do one of the buildings. Actually, there are 15 architects involved in this, and we were given the kindergarteners project. This is the site here, right? This is the length of the site, it's quite big. And in this case, we are given this area here. So we were working with the decorations and false facade. Because kindergartens in Italy, I don't know, here, they have to be enclosed, I guess. So the garden has to be enclosed, the idea was to have a mesh that will go around it and creates a garden, a fake garden in front of it, and sort of colored wood pitched roof buildings that then would actually move into the building itself. And each facade would be a different season and everything else. Another project I've been doing this year, Fiorentine Bakers, a very small project in Bocchini. Again, working with projections. 3i project. The idea was to project a drawing through the whole space. It's 500 square meters, so quite small. So the stripes and the patterns go from the facade inside the building and move above the surfaces and click onto the shopping windows, and then becomes utilized by your tenant. So very low budget project, but somewhat less than funded. Yes, this is another project, again, dealing with the idea of drawings and how drawings somewhat find that dimensionality into an artificial space. It's for a hospital in downtown Los Angeles. We were given the task of doing the entry of the hospital, and we linked back the building, the entry to this green stripe that is all around this concrete building. So it starts then leaking down into the space. It's a set of paracord panels. Maybe one of the biggest challenge was to open the span, which was 22 feet span, without being able to attach the ceiling. We could attach only the beginning and the end. We could not go through it because it was very far and very expensive to go through the entire ceiling to reach the structure. So this was actually a lot of effort to be able to span for such a small project that length. Also, there are lighting components behind the panels, so the light filters through, so there is a presence during the night. Scene drawing, different project, much different scale. You will see that this happens quite a bit in my project. This was for a table for Atelier, the Italian company. This was a cast iron project. I'm just showing you, I have a lot of those things that somehow public analysis are not always make complete sense of what I'm doing, but drawings are a way to connect them, at least they do connect them in my mind, in terms of formal representation and shadows. And another project I'm doing with Reader right now, it's a sort of weaved furniture where I'm trying to take the photorealistic image and move into a sort of refined and limited amount of threads. And we're working with a few softwares to find ways of reading and find ways to recognize the figure within a field of limited amount of colors, which is proven to be an interesting process actually, much more manual than what we expected to begin with. But I think it's quite beautiful, the kind of textile that comes out of it. So we have only a sort of 5 colors on one direction, which are 5 different grays, metallic, and then some other colors in that direction. And we're working with 3D the most to really make sure that this is a project that can be done with 50 colors. We're still working, it really is not about the shape, it's going to be fairly simple probably, but it's about getting this idea of weaving colorations and finding ways of fitting solid colors into each other that became quite interesting actually in this project. Super real. So that's the third kind of collection, we're getting there. I guess this part of the lecture really talks about the relationship between materials being used as in a literal way or in a synthetic way. And when I say literal way, it means that I think architects have been taught that materials should be used in a literal way. In many ways, we think that is the most efficient ways to approach materials, because it's actually true. I mean, there are materials that can do certain things and materials that cannot do other things, but I also think that lately we are facing a moment in architecture where there is a complete new breed of materiality that changes the perception of what is truthful and not. And I think this is a shift that has been quite strong in my projects. From the first one that I showed you, where it's really about performance, to the last one that I will show you that is really about optical effects. And the role of optical effects in the idea of fantasy and culture in general, and audience. The first project is Nike Sphere. I've done this in 2005. I was working with a textile designer from Stanford. She was working with a textile that would change shape with polymer when water touches this fabric. And I was asked by Nike to work with this fabric, and I started applying laser cutting to it, and which was actually the first time they'd done it. They saw my collections of fashion and said, oh, but she has something, and they paired me up with this textile designer. And so the idea was to, again, using the same most productive and straightforward way, we map the heat zones of the female body, and we start placing perforation on female body. So this became a collection called Nike Sphere, Macro React, because this fabric was called Macro React fabric, and it was really created by 2 layers. One is just a net underneath, and then this fabric on top, which was quite dynamic actually. It's kind of nice, the first time you see it, make it wet, it moves, and there's something about that dynamic quality that the game though doesn't last forever. After 35 times, then it doesn't really open up enough, but you know, 35 times seems to be enough for production, I guess. We also went through, maybe you don't see it from the screen, but there are cuts there to black. A set of collections for them, the most creative one. So we did a collection for tennis and for dance, and then a shoe. When I was working with them, then I realized that also they take a concept, this is a concept shoe, and then it comes 10 others that are on the market that probably you would recognize. At that point, I was working with this idea of cutting apertures, and I've been working with OIC by now for, I think, 15 years, I think. Before, when I was working for another architect, and then on my own, I was trying to really understand the potential of the patterns and the potential of the drawing when it's applied to two paths at different scale, different materials. So a lot of the work I was doing with fabric moved into a different materiality, like stainless steel in this case, and starts clearly acting differently. It makes stainless steel incredibly strong when you cut it, actually. and folded. And it became a way for us to think about custom-made lines that would come from a flat drawing and they would shape with a kind of soft mold, which is something that we looked into because molds are what a company would pay the most for, basically. So that's where a lot of investment goes. And these were sort of products that would allow them not to invest in molds, actually. So we worked on a sort of project for them that then moved on to a different scale of projects. When you go from small experimentation like the one I just showed to a bit of a larger scenario. This was a project for the Beijing Biennale in 2006, where I was trying to understand the zero perforations onto skin of a pavilion and the relationship that that starts creating in terms of skin structure. Again, it was maybe 8 meters by 4, so it's quite a small pavilion, but it was the first time where I really could apply certain techniques to a larger scale project. It was very simple, a cube, not cube, but solid with chamfer edges. And this just to give you a sense of the scale. And a lot of the effort really was about finding the shadows and folding of panels so that it creates this three-dimensionality to it. As I said, this is the kind of work where I was really looking into the performance of the material and what you could gain out of it. And I think I've done a few of those projects for furniture as well, where the pattern is engineered so that it reacts to structure in the best possible way. So we start working with the idea of thicknesses and patterns and how then we can start working with the load path of furniture. These are some of them for the drawing. So this is where I think the materials in my office were very much based on the performance you can get out of it. And after you can go with a sheet and make it do as much work as you can in terms of cultural reference and structural performance. The project goes through different scales, and this one again was done for a listing. But in this case, I was looking at the optical effect of patterns and how seeing something, it's kind of an optical effect where you have something outside the pattern and it's mirrored inside, so it looks like it's inside the basket. So this was the idea is that somewhat each project, although it keeps the same drawing, it starts changing the effect that you're looking for. I'm going to go through some of the more, the larger scale project that still has something to do with materiality and patterning and organizational system. This was a competition for the Expo in 2015. I went to the finals, but we lost. It was a pedestrian path between the arrival of the train station to the Malpensa airport terminal. So it's the sectional value, departure and arrival on two sides, so you can see from above or you can see from below. A lot of this was really a modular system of 13 modules starting to create apertures. And folded. Villanesi. Another one of those projects is, again, dealing with patterns and materiality. Monte Verità, which is in Switzerland, is a kind of a special place. It's one of those places where the magnetic field is very high, and therefore things happen to the body, or they say so. So it's a place of many people came to this place, and there's also a Bauhaus hotel next to it that now is owned by BTH. And so this was the site here. The client bought a fantastic piece of land that you could not enter to, so we had to do a tunnel underneath the hill. This is a house for 2 people and 8 cars. It's really under 80 degrees view on the lake. It's quite straightforward, a folded plane given by a set of 3 modules. The bottom floor is living, and top floor is bedrooms. And again, the ground floor is actually where he has this collection of cars. The project has a detail section of 15 degrees to go away from the hill and to also protect the house from the sun, which is actually was one of the requirements of the clients. They really wanted to comply to the highest UNEP standard of Switzerland, which is not actually, say no, but they tell you manage, which basically would allow the house to be self-contained in terms of energy. A lot of the work has been done on each room so that you could have a view on the lake from every single one of those, from the restaurant to each bedroom, and also cut into the landscape to bring the light into the garage. The materiality of the project was we worked with Italcementi and Silicon actually, there is a subcontractor of Italcementi, which is a company that's quite, I think, one of the best in the world actually for concrete. These are gigantic panels, they're cast panels for the facade. So we went up to construction documents actually and shop drawings for this project. One of the main challenges was how to take the dirt out of the facade, and we used this white cement that has a crystalline surface quality that connects with pollution and supposedly stays white. A lot of the work has been in the tapering of the panels to be able to get the water off the building itself. And these are some of the mock-ups of the facade, and the idea was to have this incredibly wide ceramic facade, and the glass has to be black, because just to get to the level of that they wanted was a triple glass, completely black glass. Another project, this time again different, I guess, in Macerata. The project is very close to the city center. This is the city center of the city. This is a new development. Developer bought the land and took down everything there was. This is a kind of interesting site because it's between the city center and the hills, so it has two important uses to maintain, which was really the basic definition of the grade and the axis of the view of the site. The project that we proposed was in three parts really. One was the commercial park that has been built, the street first of all, which is the first thing that went up, and the commercial area here that has been built. Then 80 apartments, which is really where the lot comes from for the developer, and then open theater and a small museum, which will not happen probably, actually without problem. Some of the views. So this is the public area, which is the most connected to the civic center, and then the access to the view to the hills. One of the ideas that from the street to the civic center, you would be able to go around the building. So there's an open promenade that you will always be able to access from the building. Then from the bottom of the street, you'll go in with all the services of the huge parking lot underneath. And the promenade is always open, and the skin opens up because of the geometry of the piece unfolded, opens up on the views of the hills. The housing is quite straightforward. We decided to work with brick. I mean, quite straightforward, but not quite. So unfortunately, you don't see that much, but this was black and white drawing that we don't see after. So, take it for what it is. It's brick. They do this incredible bricks in the market, and white bricks, and of three different kinds, and that's the glazing. And you don't see the dipping edges that there are in this drawing. Another project for this was a competition. No, actually, it was not a competition. We were invited by Jens Sommer, who is running a fantastic practice in Beijing, and he was asked by the developer to make, 10 towers. So we thought of inviting 10 friends instead of doing them themselves alone, which was quite generous, I think, being young. So I think these are the 6 architects invited, and then they did a center piece, which was this lake and commercial area inside, and there were a set of housing projects. I mean, there are actually some of them you might know, some of them you might not. So I got this special power. This was a proposal that was really trying to negotiate the verticality of the tower with the horizontality of the space, and somewhat you're not in urban setting, so it doesn't make sense to go with the grid. So the hope was to actually have this bottom side of the tower not only taken out because of the requirements in terms of size of the units, but also to somewhat drape into the site and through the portion of the site engage the horizontality as well as the verticality. Quite straightforward, with 3 kind of units, 3 different sizes of the units. And the skin 3D was working only on the exterior of the building. This is the parking levels, and okay, this one is the one you see. So there's a floor, there are 4 units per floor, and then the balconies are where most of the gymnastic of the skin are placed. This is a project I'm doing right now. We're really at the beginnings, but I thought I'm going to share that here. It's a business school in Taiwan, actually in Seoul. It's called Taiwan School, and the architect is designing this big think tank, and this is the project that we're just in the underground. And they gave us 56 meters long facade to do. So we're working with scanning again, and the idea of coloration, texture, quality, and scripting as a way to populate the facade. So we're working on gathering images now and starting to script the photorealistic image into the abstraction, and we're working on metallic prints for some part of the facade or prints on tempered glass on other part of the facade. You don't see that much, but yeah, it's all about the out of focus idea and photorealistic again, pixelation and transparency. A couple of projects to end. These are the one where probably my engineering nature comes out the most, and in a good or bad ways, I can't take them, which are the culinary projects. I did a project with Birmingham Museum of Art and Gallery. They gave me the main hall, and one of the ideas was to reverse the section of the museum and do an inverted vault underneath it. I was working along with an engineer at Oracle who was trying to figure out a way to create a rigidity matrix into robots, which is a structural system. Really, multi-catenary systems are one that you cannot solve. They are a non-linear system, and so there are ways in which you can somewhat guess the full finding process through rigidity matrices. And the idea was that he would develop the software part, and through the model, we would test whether or not the software was accurate. So in a very, that's the clear model reliability. And instead of using sand, I called up Nadia Zborowski and I told her, I need 40,000 crystals. And she said yes. And so here we come. We did test the model, and this is 8 meters high drop for crystals. Another project on SCI-Arc in 2008, suspended canopy, 26 capillary system with 300 different panels. You can see the mezzanine. You can see the project from the above, from the mezzanine and from underneath. So the idea was to create a double experience. It's quite simple. A lot of the calculations were done to understand the weight of each panel through laser cutting, so that it would actually behave in the way we want it to. So according to the weight of the perforation, we would get sequence billowing of the geometrical shape into the space. So a lot of it really was to test engineering calcs against physical models. And also, we were trying to find a playful space for some kind of interaction. Part of it was die cut, part of it was laser cut. And the idea was that you would be able to touch it and interact with it. A lot of the work I've been doing as well had to do with the idea of flatness and dimensionality and how you can find it back. And I think a lot of the work I've done with clothing built up to a certain knowledge of form making, actually, and how to place scenes and how to divide things in a drawing so that when they come together into dimension, they stick together. I'm just not sure a few of those first experiments I've done in 2004, 2005, and how really from flat to three-dimensional, and how those drawings shift in scale. This also informed a lot of projects in terms of furniture making, upholstery, and geometric architecture in general. Up to the latest, where I'm actually looking much more into fabric painting and silk painting. I'll show you one last video.
quietly, something to eat, and then rather than have Elena have to suffer through 100 individual questions, we'll try to restage the collective format upstairs over the rest.